This video is a quick review of irrational numbers. The first page I'm going to go through very quickly. Vertical lines can be horizontal or they can be vertical. When it says what is the integer that represents this situation, you have to decide if the number is positive or negative. So a credit of $10 is positive. Credit means you have money. A debit card of $15, that means you owe money. Think of a debit card, you use it, takes money out of your account, so that would be a negative. Another example of an integer is 250 feet below sea level. Since it says below, that represents underneath, so that's negative 250. So most of the time when you think about these, you think about the vertical number line. Another example would be temperature. Temperature can drop below zero. Number lines can be horizontal, they can be vertical, or you could have a number line and instead of having an interval of 1, it has something different. So you can see if this was an interval of 1, it would go 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7. Doesn't work. So definitely not an interval of 1. So pause the video for a second and see if you can figure out what that interval is. The interval is actually 3. And I know that because I tried going by 2s first, it didn't work. But when I went by 3s, count down 3, count down 3 more, count down 3 more, keep going. This one's a little tricky, but if I use these little tick marks, 1, 0, -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6, -7, -8, -9, -10. It works. So these are the different types of number lines you may see. Absolute value is something we haven't talked about in a long while, but absolute value on a number line is the distance from 0. Sometimes they call this magnitude. It means how far away it is or how severe it is. The absolute value of -3. How far is -3 from 0? It is 3 hops. And the way they denote this sometimes is they put the little bars on each side. So this means absolute value of -3. How far is it from 0? It is 3 units. The absolute value of +3 is also 3. So +3 is also 3 units from 0. And I'll have this corrected on your sheet, but so if you put bars on each side of 3, distance is 3 also. Okay, the other side is where I want to spend a little more time and where we spent most of our time when we were talking about rational numbers. And that is addition and subtraction, multiplication and division. With addition and subtraction, we used the number line when we were doing this. +2, we start by going to the right 2. But then when you add a -3, that's like adding a debt, taking away money. So you move backwards to the right, to the left 3, and it lands right there at -1. 2 plus -3 is -1. 2 plus -3 is the same thing as 2 subtract 3. If you start at 2 and you take away 3, the same thing would happen on the number line. So it's also equal to -1. So these two are actually equivalent expressions. -3 is the same thing as adding a -3. The next two are also equivalent expressions. Adding a -2 is the same thing as taking away 2. I'm going to write this one in a different color. This one means you start at -5. You add -2, which means you add more debt. It means it keeps getting worse. So now you owe -7. So think about what this one means in real life. If I owe $5 to someone, but then I also owe $2 to someone else, I have a total debt of $7. Same thing happens if you take away money from me. Total debt of -$7. On the right side, I started with an easy one that I could probably go down to 1st or 2nd grade and ask, what is 8 minus 2? And they could use the number line or they could just count backwards and say that this is 6. So what do you think happens when you take away a negative? When you take away a negative, it's like taking away a debt. And if you do that to me, I'm going to be happy. It's going to make me have a higher value. So it's actually the same thing as plus +2. So in class, we did this. Minus a negative is the same thing as plus positive, and that really means 10. Same thing happens on this one. -2 plus +4. So I might have to go back to the number line for this one. You go left 2, but then you add 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4 lands at +2. As a class, we got where we were pretty good at these adding and subtracting negatives and positives. Multiplication division, very different set of rules. This means you have 5 2 times, and that of course gives you 10. 2 times 5 is 10. So what happens if we throw a negative in there? This is like saying I owe $5 2 times. If I owe $5 2 times, it's -10. So with multiplication, when I throw in a negative, it just makes the answer negative. So what happens if I throw in 2 negatives? The great thing about this is anytime we see 2 negatives, they just cancel each other and the answer becomes positive. And that is the one simple rule with multiplication division. 2 negatives cancel each other and become positive. So what happens if we have 3 negatives? We've already said that -2 times -5 is +10, multiplied by a -1. Now we're back to negative. So an even number of negatives will become positive, but if you have an odd number of negatives, 2 of them cancel each other, but you still have the 1 negative left over. I think in class I demonstrated this way. The 2 negatives cancel each other, but you still have the 1 left over. When you see a fraction like this, it means the same thing as -12 divided by 3, and the same rule applies. 3 goes into 12 4 times. That 1 negative makes the answer negative. This one's a little different because 5 does not go into 18. So what I might do on this one is think about writing it as a mixed number. 5 goes into 18 3 times with 3 left over. And that negative's on the front, I can put it with either the numerator or the denominator, but not both. I like to put it just out front again or with the top number. So that's -3 3/5. However, you might also be asked to write this as a decimal. And we spent a week on this, probably September, October. To convert any fraction to a decimal, you use long division. I already know that the answer is going to be positive because I have 2 negatives that cancel each other. So here's what the long division would look like. I'm going to work it out way over here. 17 divided by 8. Been a long time since we did long division. 8 goes into 17 twice. Subtract, get a remainder of 1. As long as you have a remainder, you add a decimal and a 0, and you keep going. 8 goes into 10 once. Subtract, bring down another 0. 8 goes into 20 twice. Eight goes into 40 5 times. The decimal comes straight up. So it's positive 2.125. You might want to pause this to look at that for a minute. So 2.125. And I know it's positive because the 2 negatives canceled each other. Rules for fractions. I know fractions always terrify us, but sorry, my camera's bouncing. But remember, when you add or subtract, you just have to make sure you have common denominators. So think about what the common denominator of 5 and 8 would be. It would be 40. To get 40, I would multiply the first 2 numbers by 8. To get 40 on this one, I would multiply these 2 numbers by 5. I almost forgot my negative. I'm just going to put it with the top number. As long as you have matching denominators, you just put your numerators together. 16 plus -25, you might want to think about the number line for that. It's going to be -9. So the answer is -9/40. For the next one, I might look at a number line and think about what happens on that. We're at 3 2/3, then we would go to the left 1 1/2. This is the same thing as subtracting because plus a negative means you're subtracting. So we're actually doing 3 2/3 minus 1 1/2. And I would still have to have common denominators. The common denominator of 3 and 2 is 6. Oh, almost forgot my whole numbers. To get the 6, I would multiply these both by 2. And to make this one 6, I would multiply both of these by 3. And remember, plus a negative changed into minus. 3 minus 1 is 2. 4, 6 minus 3, 6 is 1, 6. So the answer is 2 and 1/6. Multiplication division, a little easier for the rules because you don't have to have common denominators. You just multiply numerator by numerator and denominator by denominator. I already see the 1 negative, which means my answer is negative. 2 times 5 is 10. 5 times 8 is 40, and that simplifies to negative 1/4. When dividing fractions, you keep change flip. 2/5 times flip it. 1 negative, so I just put it with my top number. And you get negative 16/25. Okay, I know that was very quick, but that's trying to remember all the rules for positive and negative numbers, which are called rational numbers. So now you will look at the Edulastic assignment for May 3rd. It's titled Grade 7 Review of the Number System, May 3rd. So when you complete that, it does count as a grade. So I made these notes directly from that. So make sure if you get stuck, use these for help. Okay, good luck.